Tahan vistarita hoya pale prema pa. Ihan mali sheche nitya shravanadi ja. Tahan means in the spiritual world. Vistarita means greatly expands. Pali Premapal means the fruit of love of God. So the creeper of bhakti, when watered, it greatly expands as soon as it reaches the spiritual world and becomes entangled in the lotus feet of Krishna. Ihan mali sheche nitya shravanadi jal. In this world, Ihan means in this world. Ihan mali means the gardener, like Ramananda Saka, who's a gardener. The gardener of bhakti. Ihan mali sheche means to sprinkle. Shravanadi jal means the water of hearing and chanting. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave this metaphor of the gardener and the devotional creeper and how it greatly expands when it comes to the spiritual world. So we can think of how our process of hearing and chanting as sprinkling water to enhance the creeper of bhakti so that it grows into the spiritual world and entwines itself on the lotus feet of Krishna. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared that he was the gardener and he was also the tree of bhakti. And he also was distributing the fruits, but he said, there are too many for me to eat and distribute, therefore I command everybody in the universe to help distribute these fruits. Om Agana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapatandikam Adantanashchidam Tanter Idam Yache Puna Puna Shriman Rupa Patamboja Rajoham Syam Bhave Bhave Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Nariya Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire, Tahan Vistarita Hoya Pale Prema Pa, Tahe Vistarita Hoya Pale Prema Pa, Ihan Mali Sheche Nitya Shravanadi Ja, Ihan Mali Sheche Nitya Shravanadi Ja, Ihan Mali Sheche Nitya Shravanadi Ja, Ihan Mali Sheche Nitya Shravanadi Ja. Gaur Premanande. To all the Malis out there, to water the creeper of devotional service today, we're going to hear from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But we've begun this afternoon, with some prayers, because we're making this great attempt today with apparently material senses made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, ego. How will the spiritual sound vibration actually reach the soul through these materially formed senses is a matter of mercy. So therefore, one must hear submissively, and one must hear from the proper source, and by doing that, Krishna helps, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's a person, and he knows our desires. And as we hear in the association of devotees with submission, then Krishna makes that, he transforms the vibration, allows it to penetrate, it descends into our spiritual heart and ears, and reawakens our love for God. We're continuing on the Adi Lila. This is chapter 1, and we're on text number 95. Jahar prashadi tamu hoy nash, tamu nash kari kari tatvera prakash. By the grace of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, this darkness of ignorance is removed and the truth is brought to light. Tatto vastu Krishna Krishna Bhakti Prema Roop, Nam Shankirtan Shabo, Ananda Sharup. The absolute truth is Sri Krishna. The absolute truth is who? How do you know that? scriptural evidence. But according to scriptural evidence, there are a lot of different kinds of scriptures. There's the Vedas, the original 4 Vedas, and in the original 4 Vedas you may find a lot of ritualistic sacrifices, worshipping Indra and so forth, talking about demigod worship. You may not find anything about Krishna in the original 4 Vedas. So then where else would you look? Before you get there, make a gradual... Before you get to the Bhagavad Gita, where else would you look? Yes? The Upanishads. So the Upanishads, do they talk directly about Krishna? Only the Gopal Tapani. But the Upanishads generally talk about the absolute truth in an impersonal way, although some of them do mention that he has a personality, because bringing people to the transcendental level, they have to have some comparison and understand the nature of consciousness and transcendence, and giving them too much too soon. And what else would you take up would you look at after the Upanishads? Yes? Before Bhagavad Gita. Before the Puranas. Before the Bhagavatam. Shruti is the Vedas and the Upanishads. Vedanta Sutra. Then we come to the Vedanta Sutra, but the Vedanta Sutra, Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra to give a concise understanding of the absolute truth, but it's so concise that it makes it difficult for anyone to understand. Therefore, there are many commentators who have tried to unpack the Vedanta Sutra. And what did Vyasadeva specifically do for people in the age of Kali, and what is the difficulty of people in the age of Kali Yuga, first of all, for understanding Shastra in the first place? One thing is that they are
men are short-lived, and they have their memory power is very much reduced, so they cannot remember much. And above and all, they're always disturbed and quarrelsome.
Disturbed, quarrelsome. What about lazy? That's a problem. Laziness is a problem because it takes a great endeavor to search after the absolute truth. The Shastra says, "Etavad eva jignasam tatva jignasunat manaha anvaya vyatare kabyam yat syat saravata saravada." In all times, all places, in all circumstances, one must search after the supreme absolute truth. But in the Kali Yuga, everyone feels meh, very lazy in the Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, prayinal payusha shabya kalavazmin yuge jana manda sumanda matayo manda pagya hupadrita. In the Iron Age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So, in that environment, the sages at Nyamasaranya wanted to know how will people be able to understand the absolute truth. Vyasadeva also, the empowered incarnation of the Lord, understood that this would be a difficult time. Therefore he compiled the Mahabharata, and within the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita. And when he finished the Puranas as supplementary explanations to the Vedanta Sutra, to the Vedas, they actually explain through stories and historical incidences that philosophy that is so tightly packed in the Vedanta Sutra. However, he also accommodated people who were in the mode of ignorance, in the mode of passion, in the mode of goodness. Therefore, he compiled various Puranas at levels to that people could understand within the various modes of material nature. And after he had finished the whole project, how did he feel? Not so good. Despondent, not so good. And what did he do there to rectify the situation? Yeah, he went to a higher spiritual authority. He went to a spiritual master. He said, "What's wrong with me? I'm doing my service, but I'm not satisfied. I'm unhappy. What am I doing wrong?" And Narada told him right away. He could see. He said, "You haven't properly explained the final object, the ashraya of everything, of everyone, the summum bonum. And you have to very clearly explain Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his pastimes." So he revised one of the Puranas and gave the very specific pastimes of Krishna. Therefore we have the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is also considered to be the natural commentary, because it's by the author himself, on the Vedanta Sutra. And it can satisfy the self, because it actually gives complete knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as complete as we can understand. But it actually, the Srimad Bhagavatam gives minute detail of how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. And how he's all-powerful. All the incarnations appear when Krishna appears. And Krishna's more powerful than anyone. But he's also sweeter than anyone. He has the qualities of sweetness, but he's also all-powerful at the same time. And we can see that it was very difficult for some to understand. Even Lord Brahma, in the Brahma Vimohana Lila, he knew who Krishna was. He had gone and prayed, remember, at the Milk Ocean, saying, "We need help. Please appear." And Krishna had appeared. But when Brahma went to Vrindavan, he went there because so many demigods, devas, were worshipping Lord Krishna, exalting his glories after he killed the Aghasura demon. And he thought, well, let me go have a look. So when he went there, Krishna was having a picnic, and he had food in his right hand, food in his left hand, food all over himself, throwing food at his friends, sharing with them on the picnic ground. And he thought, well, I'm not so sure. Let's see how all-powerful he is. He knew this is Krishna, but this is Krishna? Because Brahma is vidhi. He's rules and regulations, and he thought he stole away all his cowherd boyfriends and calves. And when he came back a moment later to check it out, which was a year in earthly time, he saw that they were still there, and he became bewildered. And then he saw that those forms were actually, that were identical to the ones he had stolen, were actually Vishnu forms, and they were all worshipping Krishna. And he began to see the unlimited power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then he offered his prayers, exalting him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna liberates all those who come in contact with him, whether he kills them or they become his devotees. He's all merciful. Therefore, Uddhava said, who would take shelter of anyone else than Krishna, who liberated Putana after she came to kill him? And after all that, Krishna just said, well, she's my mother. Even though she came as a false mother and smeared her breast with poison. But that's the nature of Krishna. Saparya jakshukram akayam avranam asnaviram shudham apapa vidham kavir manishi prabhu swayambur yatat yatitortan vyaradash chashvatibhya samabhya. That he's all pure. Anyone he touches, anyone who comes near, they become purified and elevated to the highest position. And in terms of rasa, the Rupa Goswami explains how Krishna is able to reciprocate. He's the reservoir of all rasa. He's able to reciprocate all the most intimate rasas. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ye yata mam prapadyante tamstataiva bhajamyaham. As one surrenders unto me, as one approaches me, I reward him accordingly. And Krishna is able to reciprocate with devotees who are in shantaras, a neutral relationship, and dasya, a feeling of servitorship, and sakya, friendship, and also parental affection for Krishna. He can reciprocate that. And conjugal love, this nuptial love, the lover and beloved, that Lord Chaitanya gives the essence of that in his Shikshashtakam. Shli Shiva Paravitam Panashtumam Adarshana Marmahatam Karotu Va Yatatata Va Vitatatu Lampato Mat Prananatastu Saeva Naparaha. That the lover is saying to the beloved that, well, you can leave me in any second and run off with someone else, but still I'll worship you, and still, even if you're not present before me. The heart is so attached to the lover that even if he neglects me, and in the Shikshashtakam, in the Anjali of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, if Krishna goes for some other lover, then Radharani would say, then I'll go support her, because if it gives pleasure to you. This is the mood of complete surrender in this kind of loving mood. Point is, though, that Krishna is the reservoir of all these rasas, nobody else, and can reciprocate the love of every living entity in profound ways. So, in numerous ways, the acharyas in our line, from the Gaudiya line, explain how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have to understand that because He's the goal of our life. It is Him who we are to meditate on, to fix our minds. Everyone has to fix their mind somewhere. So Krishna says, Man mana bhavamad bhakto. Fix your mind on me. So how will you fix your mind on Krishna unless you understand that Krishna is the object of life, the object of my life? We will fix our mind somewhere. And we will fix our mind and heart on that person or object that we feel is the highest goal or gives us the highest value. When contaminated by the lower modes of material nature, I have false values, and I look at other objects of love as being important. Now, those are called anarthas. They're false values. But the real value means to understand Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and fix my mind upon Him and develop my loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Once Prabhupada said, the only problem is not knowing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you know that, you don't have any problem. Because there is no problem when you love Krishna. When you take shelter of Krishna, there's no problem. There's only a problem when I forget Krishna. And as soon as I turn my attention somewhere else, then I have problems. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us this love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a way that will actually satisfy the soul. The absolute truth is Sri Krishna. And loving devotion to Sri Krishna exhibited in pure love. This is 96, Adi Lila, chapter 1. Is achieved through congregational chanting of the holy name, which is the essence of all bliss. So there you have the means for awakening that kind of love and understanding Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's the congregational chanting. So our sadhana is chanting the name of Krishna is what we take shelter of. And especially through Sankirtan, the cooperative glorification of Krishna and His names will bring us to the perfectional stage of life. Text 97. Surya Chandra Bahirera Tamashe Vinashe Bahir Vashtu Ghatta Pato Adishe Prakashe. The sun and moon dissipate the darkness of the external world and thus reveal external material objects like pots and plates. Dui bai hridayera shali adakar, andakar, dui bhagavat shange karana shakshatkar. But these two brothers, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, which two brothers? Dissipate the darkness of the inner core of the heart, and thus they help one meet the two kinds of Bhagavatas, persons or things in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eka Bhagavat Bhado Bhagavat Shastra Aro Bhagavata Bhakta Bhakti Rasha Patra. One of the Bhagavats is the great scripture Srimad Bhagavatam, and the other is the pure devotee absorbed in the mellows of loving devotion. Dui Bhagavat Dvara Dhya Bhakti Rasho Tahar Hridaye Tar Prema Hoya Vasho. Through the actions of these two Bhagavatas, the Lord instills the mellows of transcendental loving service into the heart of a living being. And thus the Lord in the heart of his devotee comes under the control of the devotee's love. I'll repeat. Through the actions of these two Bhagavatas, which two Bhagavatas? The book Bhagavata, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we happen to be distributing indiscriminately. We go door to door and say, just take this. It's the highest literature in the universe. And we're knocking on doors of people who have no idea what we're talking about. And they're in there watching television. It's not like they're on the bank of the Ganges and we're coming and meditating. We come up and say, hey, you want the Bhagavatam? They're in there watching TV, having a TV dinner. And we come in and say, you want a Bhagavatam? That's Lord Nityananda's mercy. That's Lord Chaitanya's mercy. They were indiscriminate in distributing this knowledge door to door everywhere, saying, here, take it. Knock on the door, roll on the ground, somehow or other get them to take it, right? So that's one of the ways that people become transformed, is through the book Bhagavat. It enters into their life. Pushta Krishna Prabhu's wife, Daru Brahma, she was telling me a few years ago about how she got a Bhagavatam. It was a first or second canto. It was in a mall, I think. She was walking through a mall, minding her own business, shopping to her heart's content, whatever. And somebody approached her and she bought the Bhagavatam. And she didn't know what it was, couldn't understand it at first, but somehow or other she became very attached to it. And she kept it in her house. And then more and more her attachment grew to it. She used to sleep with it put it at the top of her bed. She knew it was spiritual. And she started reading it, and then she met devotees, and then someone said, oh, you have the Bhagavatam. And her whole spiritual life unfolded. To this day, she talks about how much she appreciates book distribution. She always advocates it because she knows that it saved her. She got a book, a Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is very powerful book. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that it's not different from Krishna. It's also not different from Goloka Vrindavan. How's that possible? Well, how's it possible that Krishna has billions of calves in the little town of Vrindavan? Because he's the supreme mystic. He's the supreme mystic of all mystics. And amazing things happen when you're around Krishna. So everything's there in the Bhagavatam. And we're distributing it like anything. Prabhupada brought that book over and said, this is the medicine. Let people take this medicine of Bhagavata. So that's one of the ways that people come to this full state of consciousness. And this is one of the Bhagavatas that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is distributing. He told Gopal Bhatta Goswami, don't get married, just read Bhagavatam. That's a nice instruction. One of the two Bhagavats is the great scripture Srimad Bhagavatam. We have it. We have that. And the other is the pure devotee absorbed in the mellows of loving devotion. Through the actions of these two Bhagavatas, the Lord instills the mellows of transcendental loving service into the heart of a living being. Look up the word instill. This is how he instills the mellows of transcendental loving service. So, what are mellows of transcendental loving service? Gandharvika. What are mellows? What does the word mellow mean? Where does it come from? Why do we use the word mellow all the time? Use the microphone and boldly say what you're going to say, and even if you're wrong, go down in flames.
Taste. Be the taste or the rasas, is that what's called mellows?
Taste, rasas, that's the context we use it in. And Ramananda Prabhu is eagerly waiting to jump in because he has something more historical to say about the...
Mellows means it's rasa, as she said, and it can mean the 5 rasas that you described before at the beginning of the class.
But why do we use that word? Yes! Himanshu.
Basically, there is no equivalent of rasa in English. It's very difficult to describe. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj used the word mellows for rasa. And Shivas Pandit Prabhu taught that in the class. Sorry.
He taught you that in your class?
Yeah. It comes in Nectar of Devotion.
That's right. Prabhupada mentions it. He says that it's hardly, there's a word, hard to define the word rasa in English. So he used the word his spiritual master used, mellow. And someone asked me about that recently and said, well, this word mellow, it doesn't seem to match up in English. What does instill mean? Who's got instill?
So instill is a verb and it has 2 meanings. One is to gradually but firmly establish an idea
To gradually but firmly establish
an idea or attitude.
An idea or attitude.
Especially a desirable one.
Especially a desirable one.
In a person's mind.
In a person's mind. Wow. Now I'm going to read the sentence again and just see how much more meaning it has. Through the actions of these 2 Bhagavatas, the Lord instills the mellows of transcendental loving service into the heart of a living being. We're all living beings, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be here. So we have this opportunity. We have this opportunity. That's what we're here for. We're all lined up, ready for it. And we're opening our heart, our mind, all the channels of our senses. We want these mellows. We want the Bhagavatas to instill these mellows within our heart. We want the Srimad Bhagavatam to enter. We have nothing against it. We're ready to change. Right, Hansapriya? Yeah, we're totally ready. We're ready to give up our anartas. We'll abandon them in a second. We'll give up our sense of I, me, and mine in the material world. And we're ready to transfer it to the spiritual world at any time. In fact, we're begging for it. We want the guidance, and we're getting that. So we hear that, we get that impetus, and it becomes instilled in our heart, actually through the Bhagavatam. Just by hearing. You can read it, you can hear it, you can recite it. And in all the different ways, the Bhagavatam is 100% transcendental. What percentage? 100%. Correct. So 100% transcendental, and it instills the mellows of transcendental loving service within the heart, and that's where we want it, right in the heart. We don't want envy in the heart. We don't want problematic material desires that draw me into a loop of endless frustration over and over again, taking those things which are poisonous for me, which interrupt my loving emotions for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I only want these loving mellows. So we can get it through the actions of these 2 Bhagavatas. So there's actions also. These 2 Bhagavatas. Of course, the book Bhagavata is taken to be a passive agent. But the person Bhagavats, they're active agents. They can be very aggressive, actually. Prabhupada came all the way across the ocean. That's pretty aggressive. Everyone said, don't go there. And he said, I'm going. Whatever you say, I don't care. I'm going overseas. And, he went to Mukunda's house. Mukunda was Michael Grant. He was living, of course, can't say he was completely satisfied because he wasn't, but, he was minded in his own business, being a musician and everything like that. And the Swami, came to his place and said, I got to move. You got to help me out. And he helped him start the 2nd Avenue storefront. That's where it all started. Prabhupada giving classes there. And when Prabhupada came there to 2nd Avenue to negotiate the lease, what did he bring with him? I'll give you a hint. If it was our own Sri Krishna Purushottam and he was going to make a lease agreement, what would he bring with him? Yeah, he'd bring a set of Bhagavatams. Because SKP is following in the footsteps. This is our Sampradaya. So where we get it from? From Prabhupada. This was his mood. He went to negotiate the lease. He said, how much for the storefront? It was $100 or something like that. And Prabhupada said, perfect. We have a membership in our organization. And Michael Grant, Mukunda was looking at him and said, we don't have a membership. And Prabhupada was saying, we have a membership, and he's a member, and he's a member. He's like, I'm not a member. What's he talking about? And then he handed him the book, and he said, now we're making you the member. And it's only $23 a month. And so now you're a member, and we'll just take it out of the rent. Done deal. Finished. That's aggressive. Prabhupada was very aggressive. The person Bhagavat is aggressive. So he gave him the books and he said, that's okay, that's how we'll do it. And then Prabhupada told Michael to go have the electricity turned on. To go talk to Con Edison and tell them that we're not paying a deposit because we're a non-profit. So Michael was thinking, this is New York. Maybe Swami doesn't know what he's talking about. So he went down there and he said, maybe you don't have us, what kind of organization is it? And he said, no, you got to pay the deposit. So he goes back to Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, what did he say? And he said, we have to pay deposit. Prabhupada didn't say anything. Next day he went down there and they waived the deposit. Prabhupada once said, I'm a Calcutta boy. He was aggressive. That was Krishna's money. And he was on Krishna's mission. And that's humility. Some people think humility means to get under your desk and whatever people swing at you, you have to accept it. Prabhupada didn't accept anything. He accepted the order of Krishna and his spiritual master, and he came aggressively, but that's humility because it means that you're giving up your own interest to follow Krishna's interest. And that's what the Bhagavata is. The Bhagavata has no other interest except for the book Bhagavata, and he has no other interest besides Krishna's interest. And that's powerful. When you meet someone who has that absolute conviction that I have no other business in life except serving Krishna, that is their conviction in their heart. It's not mixed with anything else. This is powerful. It emanates outward into the whole world. As soon as I mix something else into it, it becomes feeble and weak. So these two Bhagavats, we get around them and we know we're being changed. You can't compromise when you're around somebody who's uncompromising. I mean, you can, but you have to go away. You have to go do something else. But around someone who's decided their surrender, they're going to completely surrender, then you'll be, by their influence, you'll be reformed. And this is what the Bhagavatas do, by their influence. And then the Srimad Bhagavatam, this transcendental sound vibration is Krishna. Krishne swa damo pagate dharma gadadibi saha kalo nashtra drishamesha purarnar kodonodita. Just after Lord Krishna, and we are very fortunate, we're born in the Kali Yuga, right after Krishna appeared. He doesn't appear before every Kali Yuga. There's a long cycle. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Arhadya Brahman. Krishna is explaining how he appears at different intervals. We just happen to land in a space where not only Lord Krishna was there, but Lord Chaitanya came as he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Swayam Bhagavan, no different than Krishna except that he was yellow. And in the mood of Radharani. Radha, duty bhava. He had the luster and also the mood of Radharani. Karuna bharite, which means Radharani is overburdened with mercy. So she's just giving it out to everyone. That's why in Vrindavan everyone knows that's where you go. Radhe Radhe. They're all devotees of Radharani. So that's Lord Chaitanya, he's appeared. And he's distributing these two Bhagavatas and teaching everyone else how to become Bhagavatas. And that's what the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is. It's an institution meant to give everyone the opportunity to become trained as a pure Bhagavata. And then go train other people. That was the mode of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we like it very much. Right? Too much. Through the actions of these two Bhagavatas, the Lord instills the mellows of transcendental loving service into the heart of a living being. And thus the Lord, in the heart of his devotee, comes under the control of the devotee's love. Comes under the control of the devotee's love. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives very clear progressive explanation of the levels of advancement in devotional service, and he also explains at which point Krishna becomes controlled by the devotee. You can read about that in the Madhurya Kadambini. Text number 101. Eka adbhut shamokale dohara prakash aru adbhut chitta guhar toma karinash. The first wonder is that both brothers appear simultaneously, and the other is that they illuminate the innermost depths of the heart. E chandra shurya dhui parama shodai jagatera bhagye ghode karela udai. These two, the sun and moon, are very kind to the people of the world. Thus, for the good fortune of all, they have appeared on the horizon of Bengal. The horizon of where? Bengal. Purport: the celebrated ancient capital of the Sain dynasty, which was known as Gauda Desh or Gauda, was situated in what is now the modern district of Malda. Later, this capital was transferred to the 9th or central island on the western side of the Ganges and Navadvip, which is now known as Mayapur and was then called Gaudapur. Lord Chaitanya appeared there, and Lord Nityananda came there and joined him from the district of Birbhum. They appeared on the horizon of Gauda Desh to spread the science of Krishna consciousness, and it is predicted that as the sun and moon gradually move west, the movement they began 500 years ago will come to the Western civilizations by their mercy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu drive away the 5 kinds of ignorance of the conditioned soul. In the Mahabharata, Udyoga Parva, 43rd chapter, these 5 kinds of ignorance are described. They are: 1. Accepting the body to be the self. 2. Making material sense gratification one's standard of enjoyment. 3. Being anxious due to material identifications. 4. Lamenting. And 5. Thinking that there is anything beyond the absolute truth. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya eradicate these 5 kinds of ignorance. Whatever one sees or otherwise experiences, one should know to be simply an exhibition of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's energy. Everything is a manifestation of Krishna. Where does it say that? Everything is a manifestation of Krishna. Go ahead. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samannita. Bali, give us the translation. Approximate.
Yeah. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. I am the master of everything, or source of everything. Aham sarvasya iti matva bhajante mam means those who meditate on me, Drudha Bhava Samannita means their mind, they will be fixed on the devotional path.
With all their heart and soul. Everything emanates from me.
Everything
the wise who knows this perfect, engage in my devotional service all their hearts, right? They understand. So where else does it say that everything is Krishna's energy? Go ahead. Lay a few shlokas on us here. Come on.
Idam sarvam jagat abhyakta murti. No, it is not that Krishna says.
Look it up, you can see. A few more shlokas. You've got to have at least 3 shlokas to say Krishna's source of everything. Himanshu? Go ahead, give him the... And back it up. You got to be ready to back it up. It's got to work in a court of law.
So this is about the material energy. Maya dhakshena prakriti suyate sucharacharam hetu nanena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. And next verse is about the spiritual energy, which I don't...
So give us, back up why you said this verse. What does it mean, and How do you back it up that Krishna is the source of everything, or that all energies come from Krishna?
So this is the backing is Krishna is saying Maya Dhikshena Prakriti, the material nature is running under his supervision, direction. Maya Dhikshena Prakriti. So from the point of material energy, that's why I quoted this verse.
And very literally, Mayadhyakshena means the glance of Krishna. He's talking about Adhyakshena means he glances over everything, and by that, characharam, everything moving and unmoving is being animated, right? Hetunani nakonteya, hetu means the cause. Jagad parivartite.
So that means world.
Yes.
Relation and
Look it up.
relation.
Shraddha's got one, and then Ramananda Saka, and then Bali. This order. Start with Shraddha. She's got a fantastic shloka lined up, or some point.
I was saying there are two types of energies of Krishna: the material and the spiritual. And in chapter 7, he says Bhumir Apar for the material energy. He says Bhumir Apo Nalo Vayo Kham Mano Buddhir Evicha Ahankara Ityame Bhinna Prakriti Ashtada. So these 6 or 8 types are his material energies. And then in the next verse he says Aparemyam itastam anyam prakriti vidhi me param jiva bhuta mahabhaho yayayam dharyate jagat. Besides these, O mighty Arjun, there's another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material in inferior nature. And in the next verse then again in 7.6 he says Etad yonini bhutani sarvani nitya upadharaya aham kitnasya jagataha prabhava pralayastatha. So all created beings have their source in these two natures. So that kind of covers everything.
Okay, good. Sounding pretty good.
I was probably thinking about the next verse.
Go ahead. Okay.
Which says that of all that is material and all that is spiritual, I am both the origin and the dissolution.
That'll work. Say the verse though. You got to know the Sanskrit to these verses. At least the Bhagavad Gita, you got to know all the Sanskrit.
Matar parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam pratam sutremana gnayava. And I think
Say the translation. Look at the verse and say the translation. Because you also said another one.
Yeah, this verse is a different. This is not what I was
Ye
thinking about.
chaiva sattvika bhava rajasastamasaschaye mate vaitam vidhi natwaham teshu te mai. All states of being, whether it be of goodness, passion. Go ahead, Bali.
Yeah, I was thinking of one which is corroborating the same. Brahmanno hi pratisthaham amritasya vasasya cha saswatasya cha dharmasya sukhasya kantikasya cha. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So basically, the first line it says that I am the basis means most people think that Brahman is the ultimate, but Krishna is saying that I am still
the Brahman energy comes from, but the material energy, that's from Durga. She manifests it. Prove it comes from Krishna. Someone told me recently that everything manifests from Durga, including Krishna. So prove that's not true from the Bhagavad Gita. Who's got more verses? Or from the Bhagavatam? Go ahead.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyashayaton Vayad Itaratas Churches Pravigasparat Tene Brahma Adi Kavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Varimyamyata Vinamayo Yachatisha Gavamrisha Damna Svena Sada Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
And meaning? At least the relevant
Oh my
part.
Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. That anyway, it says that everything emanates from Krishna.
Okay. Janmadya Sayataha, right? Oh, in the back, Mahesh.
It's from Brahma Samhita 1. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. That is the
Okay.
first one. And
All right.
also, I am Ishopanishad first verse.
Yes.
Om Purnam Ada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because He is completely perfect, all emanations from Him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself, because He is the complete whole. Even though so many complete units emanate from Him, He remains the complete balance.
Good. Thank you.
This one is from the Brahma Samhita. Srishti sthiti pralaya sadhana shakti reka chayai vayasya bhuvanani vivarti durga ichchana rupama piyasya chacheshta tesham govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. The external potency Maya, who is the nature of the shadow of the Chit potency, is worshipped by all people as Durga, the creating, preserving and destroying agency of this mundane world. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, in accordance with whose will Durga conducts herself.
Good. Mukaravind, last word.
It is regarding how everything is Krishna's energy. So it comes in Vishnu Puran, page number 384 in Sloka book. Vishnu Sakti Paraprokta Kshetra Gyakya Tatha Para Avidya Karma Samgyamya Tritiya Saktir Ishyate Ishyate. Translation is: the internal potency of the Supreme Lord Vishnu is spiritual as verified by the Shastras. There is another spiritual potency known as Kshetragya or living entity. The third potency, which is known as nescience, makes the living entity godless and fills him with fruitive activity.
Okay. So, one thing, go ahead. You have one more? You have to be able to prove that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and all energies come from Him.
So, this is from the Shveteshwara Upanishad. Shveteshwara Upanishad. Na tasya karyam karanam cha vidyate, na tata samaschabhyadikascha drishyate, parasya shaktir vividaiva shruyate, swabhaviki jnana bala kriya cha. He does not possess bodily form like that of an ordinary living entity. There is no difference between his body and his souls. He is absolute. All his senses are transcendental. Any one of his senses can perform the action of any other sense. Therefore, no one is greater than him or equal to him. His potencies are multifarious, and thus his deeds are automatically performed as a natural sequence.
Okay, pass the microphone back.
This is Bhagavad Gita 10:39. It says, Yacchapi sarva bhutana bijam tadaham arjuna na tad asti vina yat syan maya bhutam characharam. The translation is, O Arjuna, I am the generating seed of all existences. There is no being, moving or non-moving, that can exist without me.
Okay. So there's some good evidence. You should know all those verses and be ready to offer them into evidence to establish Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because that's what we are. We're like a training center. We have to, and these books are meant for us to understand very clearly. At least should know all the basic verses from the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam to be able to hold your ground in a debate somewhere. And there are lots of people around the world that are in various, that represent various schools of thought. They are very learned. And we should represent our Sampradaya in a similar fashion, to be very learned, to understand the philosophy of the Siddhanta. That's why Prabhupada gave us all these books. Not just for distribution, but we should become great scholars of them. And and be able to, at a moment's notice, defend the Siddhanta and present it to others in such a way that they can understand it clearly and authoritatively by presenting Shastra. Shruti Shmiti Paranadi Panchatriki Vidambina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktirupatayaiva Kalpate. If one performs devotional service that isn't in line with the Shruti, the Smriti, the Panchatrik Vidhi, it becomes a disturbance to society. And if you look at the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, you'll find that it flies off in many different directions over time. There are many different sects where people take the Siddhanta in the wrong direction. Siddhanta means to understand what something is and also what it isn't. And to be very clear about it. Siddhanta bolya chitana kara alash iha hoite Krishna shuridmanash. One has to understand the Siddhanta very clearly, because if one does, then the mind becomes fixed in devotional service. And this is a distinction between the lower level of devotee and higher level of devotee. What is the Uttama Adhikari, the description by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu of what is an Uttama Adhikari? What are the distinctions?
His faith is very strong and he is able to defend and prove his realizations in Krishna consciousness.
It's described as, yes, go ahead.
And convince others of the Krishna consciousness.
Shastra yuktye sunipuna dridha shada jar uttama adhikari she tare shangshar. So this means, sunipana means an expert. Somebody knows how to connect everything in the Shastra. Shastra yuktye sunipana means, Shastra yuktye means knows logic, argument, how to prove God, God's existence, and how to prove Krishna as the Supreme Personality of God. And sunipana means like a genius, like how to put everything together. And how do you become a master at something? Practice. How much practice? Know exactly how much practice. According to recent studies. Okay, 40 years is something Prabhupada said about chanting Hare Krishna. In recent studies, there's a book that came out recently. A man was studying how does somebody become a master at something. How many hours? 20,000 hours. Is it only 10,000? It's not 20,000? And he shows people who have spent, 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day studying a certain science. After about 10 years, they become a master. So you have to study these books scrutinizingly. Should study at least an hour a day. Much better 2 hours a day. Even better 3-4 hours a day if you can cut down on something. Or at least take out time to have retreats where you can study the books scrutinizingly so you can know them backwards and forwards. It's for your own edification, but also because we'll present these to the rest of the world. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very keen on devotees, all his devotees being very learned in all different kinds of philosophies so they could present Siddhanta for the protection of the world. Otherwise, anybody gets any old idea and they just start presenting it and they'll start a new program and then off they go. And then all kinds of other people get misled. So we have to become expert at studying. Prabhupada's the one who carried forward this Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, all these exams from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He instituted it. Prabhupada followed what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said. So everyone who's taking the time to study these books very carefully is following in their footsteps. Very much needed and wanted. Okay. These two, the sun and moon, are very kind to the people of the world. Thus, for the good fortune of all, they have appeared on the horizon of Bengal. 103. Let us therefore worship the holy feet of these two lords. Thus one can be rid of all difficulties on the path of self-realization. I have invoked the benediction of the Lords with these two verses, texts 1 and 2 of this chapter. Now please hear attentively the purpose of the third verse. What are verse 1 and 2 of the first chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita? Mukharavind.
Text 1 is Vande Guru Isa Bhaktan Isha Ishavatarkam Tat Prakasam Tat Sakti Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sangikam. And text 2 is Vande Guru is Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaudadaya Puspavanto Chitto Sando Tamo Nido.
And what are the meanings?
The first meaning is tells like how Krishna, Supreme Lord Chaitanya is exhibited in 6 forms. Like Vande Guru Isha Bhaktan, and he comes as spiritual master.
Masters.
Spiritual master, Gurun, yeah. Gurun is spiritual master. Vande Gurun Isa Bhaktan, and the devotee of the East means Lord. Like Srivas Pandit and all, Srivas Pandit devotees. Isha means another form of Lord, and Isa Avatarakam, and his incarnation like Advaita Acharya. Tat Prakasam Tat Saktim. Prakasham means and his manifestation like Nityanand Prabhu. Tat Prakasam Tat Saktim. Tat Saktim means and his energy like Gadadhar Pandit and Srivas and Gadadhar Pandit. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sangikam. He is known as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
And the next verse?
Next verse is Vande Krishna Chaitanya. Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya.
Just say the translation.
Sri Krishna Chaitanya, the 2 brothers, Nityanand, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityanand Prabhu, they have arisen in the God days, and they are like moon and sun and moon, who are performing the wonderful pastime.
They've arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauta to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. So these are the 2 first verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And you should memorize these verses from the Mangalacharan, the first verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, because they form the basis of the whole book. And as you enter into the study of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll refer back to them again and again. So get a recording of the Mangalacharan verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then just listen to them over and over and over again until you learn them. I purposely avoid extensive description for fear of increasing the bulk of this book. I shall describe the essence as concisely as possible. 106. Essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. Shunile kandibe chitera agnadi dosh Krishna ghada prema habe paibi santosh. Simply hearing submissively will free one's heart from all the faults of ignorance. And thus one will achieve deep love for Krishna. That is the path of peace. What is the path of peace? Submissive hearing. And what is submissive hearing? What kind of benefits does it render? All the faults of ignorance become removed from the heart just by submissive hearing. And one develops deep love for Krishna. If one patiently hears about the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Nityananda Prabhu, and Sri Advaita Prabhu and their devotees, devotional activities, names, and fame, along with the mellows of their transcendental loving exchanges, one will learn the essence of the absolute truth. Therefore, I have described these in Chaitanya Charitamrita with logic and discrimination. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, first chapter, describing the spiritual masters. And now I'm going to read the introduction to the next chapter. Okay? Is that right? Yes. I'm not convinced. Yes. Oh, all right. The Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This chapter explains that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. Who is Lord Chaitanya? Therefore, the Brahman effulgence in the bodily luster of Lord Chaitanya and the localized supersoul situated in the heart of every living entity is his partial representation. The Purusha avatars are also explained in this connection. Mahavishnu is the reservoir of all conditioned souls. But as confirmed in the authoritative scriptures, Lord Krishna is the ultimate fountainhead, the source of numerous plenary expansions, including Narayan, who is generally accepted by Mayavadi philosophers to be the absolute truth. The Lord's manifestation of Prabhav and Vaibhav expansions, as well as partial incarnations and incarnations with delegated powers, are also explained. Lord Krishna's ages of boyhood and youth are discussed, and it is explained that his age at the beginning of youth is his eternal form. The spiritual sky contains innumerable spiritual planets, the Vaikunthas, which are manifestations of the Supreme Lord's internal energy. Innumerable material universes are similarly exhibited by his external energy, and the living entities are manifested by his marginal energy. Because Lord Krishna Chaitanya is not different from Lord Krishna, he is the cause of all causes. There is no cause beyond him. He is eternal, and his form is spiritual. Lord Chaitanya is directly the Supreme Lord Krishna, as the evidence of authoritative scriptures proves. This chapter stresses that a devotee who wishes to advance in Krishna consciousness must have knowledge of Krishna's personal form, his three principal energies, his pastimes, and the relationship of the living entity with him. I'll read the last sentence again. This chapter stresses that a devotee who wishes to advance in Krishna consciousness, raise your hand if you're in that category. Oh, good, it's unanimous. Must have knowledge of Krishna's personal form, his three principal energies, his pastimes, and the relationship of the living entity with him. I'll read it backwards. One must have relationship, one must know the relationship of Krishna's pastimes and the relationship of the living entity with him. One must know his three principal energies. One must know these along with his personal form in order to advance in Krishna consciousness. And that's what this chapter particularly stresses. Now I'll read it forwards one more time. This chapter stresses that a devotee who wishes to advance in Krishna consciousness, let's just take another check. Raise your hand. Okay. Must have knowledge of Krishna's, his, and his. Okay, so somebody should make a, what are they called? A charade? Yeah. So it's the different, so we can understand through sign language these four different things that we should know. Who's good at it? Himanshu. Yeah. Who's an expert at this? I think that Gandharvika is. Isn't it? Is it true? Okay. Do you mind? So you can stand right over here and you move the camera so our listeners at home can see. Mukaravind. Oh, okay, we have Ramananda's up there. When we have our new facility, we'll have it'll be the temple room will be like a television studio. So we'll have cameras coming from every direction so we can zoom in and zoom out and all these things. So we need four different indications, non-spoken. This chapter stresses that a devotee who wishes to advance in Krishna consciousness must have knowledge of Krishna's personal form. And what about the knowledge part? Do that in the flute. Try that. Like that, and then the flute. Okay. Knowledge of Krishna's personal form. His three principal energies. So what did we get?
First one is saying spiritual.
Spiritual?
Second one is indeed material.
Material?
And third one with the suffering jivatma.
Jiva, okay. The internal, external, and the jiva. And okay. And then his pastimes. Okay, Krishna's pastimes and the relationship of the living entity with him. Okay, give her a hand. Okay, so what are the four things that Lord Chaitanya taught that we should know? That was excellent. Beautiful. We could turn that into a whole Bharatanatyam dance. You did it so gracefully. Amazing. What are the four things? One person raise your hand and say. Bali.
Krishna's form, knowledge of Krishna's form, his principal three energies, and his pastimes, and the relationship with the living beings.
It really helped to have seen Gandharvika, doesn't it? It sticks in your mind, right? Here's somebody else try. What are the four things? Yeah.
Krishna's personal form, three material energies, his pastime, and relationship with the devotees.
Yeah. His three principal energies, which internal, external, and the marginal, right? Excellent. One more. Someone try. Okay.
In order to advance in bhakti, one should have knowledge of Krishna's personal form, his three principal energies, his pastimes, and the relationship with his devotees.
Thank you very much. So this is very sweet. So we're cultivating knowledge of these things, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and explicated these things perfectly. If you just study the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, you'll get knowledge of these four different categories. And somebody should supervise. So these are necessary in order to advance in Krishna consciousness. Shri Krishna Prabhum Vande Balo Pi Yad Anugrahat Tarinnana Matagraha Vyaptum Siddhanta Sagaram. I offer my obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusive truths, which is full of the crocodiles of various theories. Purport. By the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even an inexperienced boy with no educational culture can be saved from the ocean of nescience, which is full of various types of philosophical doctrines that are like dangerous aquatic animals. The philosophy of the Buddha, the argumentative presentations of the Gyanis, the yoga system of Patanjali and Gautama, and the systems of philosophers like Kanada, Kapila, and Dattatreya are dangerous creatures in the ocean of nescience. By the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one can have real understanding of the essence of knowledge by avoiding these sectarian views and accepting the lotus feet of Krishna as the ultimate goal of life. Let us all worship Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for his gracious mercy to the conditioned souls. I'm going to read one more because this is one of the verses that we chant oftentimes before we take prasadam. Krishnot kirtana gana nartana kala pato jani brajita sadbhakta valihangsa chakra madhupa shreni viharaspadam karnanandi kaladvanir vahatu me jiva maru prangane Shri Chaitanya Dayanidhe Tavalasal Lila Sudaswarduni. O my merciful Lord Chaitanya, may the nectarian Ganges water of your transcendental activities flow on the surface of my desert-like tongue. Beautifying these waters are the lotus flowers of singing, dancing, and loud chanting of Krishna's holy name, which are the pleasure abodes of unalloyed devotees. These devotees are compared to swans, ducks, and bees. The river's flowing produces a melodious sound that gladdens their ears. Purport: our tongues are always engaged in vibrating useless sounds that do not help us realize transcendental peace. The tongue is compared to a desert because a desert needs a constant supply of refreshing water to make it fertile and fruitful. Water is the substance most needed in the desert. The transient pleasure derived from mundane topics of art, culture, politics, sociology, dry philosophy, poetry, and so on is compared to a mere drop of water because although such topics have a qualitative feature of transcendental pleasure, they are saturated with the modes of material nature. Therefore, neither collectively nor individually can they satisfy the vast requirements of the desert-like tongue. Despite crying in various conferences, therefore, the desert-like tongue continues to be parched. For this reason, people from all parts of the world must call for the devotees of the Lord Sri Chaitanya, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are compared to swans swimming around the beautiful lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or bees humming around his lotus feet in transcendental pleasure, searching for honey. The dryness of material happiness cannot be moistened by so-called philosophers who cry for Brahman, liberation, and similar dry speculative objects. The urge of the soul proper is different. The soul can be solaced only by the mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his many bona fide devotees, who never leave the lotus feet of the Lord to become imitation Mahaprabhus, but all cling to his lotus feet like bees that never leave a honey-soaked lotus flower. Lord Chaitanya's movement of Krishna consciousness is full of dancing and singing about the pastimes of Lord Krishna. It is compared herein to the pure waters of the Ganges, which are full of lotus flowers. The enjoyers of these lotus flowers are the pure devotees, who are like bees and swans. They chant like the flowing of the Ganges, the river of the celestial kingdom. The author desires such sweetly flowing waves to cover his tongue. He humbly compares himself to materialistic persons who always engage in dry talks from which they derive no satisfaction. If they were to use their tongues to chant the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, as exemplified by Lord Chaitanya, they would taste sweet nectar and enjoy life. Okay, we'll take some reflections. That means one thing that you heard that's stuck in your mind, that you're taking with you. And Garvika's starting us off.
I have a question.
Okay.
So you talked about how we should remember these shlokas to become like devotees and realize. But the problem is because in modern days life we are so engrossed in so many other things. Even if we memorize the shlokas, we can't like cross tell or so how does one?
You can't what?
Suppose if we know the chapter, but if somebody asks what is the fifth shloka or what is the shloka that explains this, we cannot say that.
You can
but no, but at least at this stage. So what can one do to give importance to remember the shlokas and?
Well, repetition is the mother of learning. So I recommend that wherever you go, in your pocket, you always carry some shlokas. I recommend 7 shlokas. Is a number a godbrother of mine many years ago passed on to me. Always keep 7 shlokas in your pocket. And wherever you go, whenever you'll notice that you have a lot of time during the day, you pull these shlokas out. Actually, Mukharavind would be a witness if he was here, but he just walked out of the room. But when we were in Mayapur, we had a walk between the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir and the place where we were staying at the Vaishnava Academy. It's about a 5-minute walk. And because we walked back and forth a few times, within the time we had allotted walking back and forth, we learned several shlokas while we were in Mayapur, just by looking at them and walking along. And so that's one thing. Keep 7, and wherever you go, always have them in your pocket. It's part of my, everything. I have certain things I always have in my pocket: a pen, a pad, and a few other things. But shlokas are always there. And so whenever you get a moment, pull out shlokas, and you'll notice how many moments you actually have in the day when you carry them with you. And then learn those 7 really well. Look at the shloka, learn the shloka word for word, keep saying it in different circumstances, and then you just need a bigger glass. It's like 50 times. Okay, learn the shlokas completely, and then look up their commentaries. Go deeply into the commentaries. Like, for instance, if you're learning some shloka from the Bhagavad Gita, look at all Prabhupada's lectures that he said on that verse, and study them. And then look at any other commentaries that were on that. And if somebody else gave class on it, look at that too. And then use the shloka. You should give classes, and then use the shloka. And it'll start to take on meaning for you at a certain time. Now, one thing is, it's not mechanical. Although we put some endeavor into it out of devotion, there's a way that the shloka will reveal itself to you. Because it's Krishna. It's internal energy. So if you serve the shloka by being reverent and listening to it and appreciating it, don't do it in a fruitive way, like, keep the fruitive mentality far away, that I want to learn the shloka so I know a lot of shlokas or whatever might be there. Just serve the shloka by saying it, use your tongue, and say it right. Like in practicing Mridanga, you can learn a mantra and then do it too fast, and you can do it for years and years and years, and then you never get it. My Mridanga teacher always says, slower, slower, slower. Because whatever you learn right going slow, later on you can do fast. And whatever you learn wrong going fast, you can never do right. So do it slowly, and then use it in different circumstances, and sometime the shloka will reveal himself to you in a profound way. I've found that when I do my puja in the morning, I add a lot of shlokas on. Sometimes if I keep adding more and more shlokas, which I've done over the years, I have to alternate different kinds of shlokas, because if I do them all, I won't have time for anything else. But there's a way in which I've noticed that the shlokas that I do for my puja, that I'm actually offering to my deities, here's a nice shloka and offer to my deities while I'm doing the puja, then somehow or other, I always learn that shloka very quickly. And that's why I've deduced that it's a process of devotion, because the Lord appreciates it, and then He just allows you to keep it, because you're using it for the right reasons. And there's no harm in going over and over and over the Shastras. There's no harm, all good. So learn chapters, sit down and chant chapters of Gita. If you can do 3 chapters a day, all the better. You'll develop a capacity. Some people can sit down and chant the whole Gita, no problem, because they're used to it. And that's good. It's the Gita. And learn the Bhagavatam really well. Go into it deeply. What else are you going to do? I mean, what else is really going on in the world these days? Besides spreading the Krishna consciousness movement, which does take a lot of time and energy and so forth, but you have to be balanced, because you have to have something to distribute as well. In any way, we should learn strategically the important shlokas that are there for preaching, so we can present them to other people. And if you don't have a great capacity for it, then just chant the Mahamantra. That's sufficient. But listen very carefully. Be a submissive hearer. Shraddha.
2 things, Maharaj. One was that you said when you offer the shlokas to the deity. So I just wanted to submit some evidence. When you read from when we were doing the night readings on from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and you read the first 2 verses, the next day Mukharvinda memorized those 2 on his way to office, and then he told me in the evening. And the next morning when we were doing the prayers, I was very surprised because after our pranam mantras and all that, he recited those 2 shlokas and he started offering them to the deities, and I was pretty amazed that today he could rattle that off so fast. So offering them, yes, and I was like, why do I not do it? And the second thing which I had was, you talked about the book Bhagavad and the person Bhagavad, and you said that you gave an example about Prabhupada being very aggressive. And I was also thinking about aggressive is, usually we take aggressive as, hard and harsh and like that. But also, I was also thinking of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Also comes in an aggressive way, like a flood. Floods can be aggressive. And I was reading. Actually, we were reading with our friend from Oracle the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, and there Prabhupada says that you can understand Srimad Bhagavatam much more easily when you have the mercy of Lord Chaitanya on you. So,
thank you.
Wanted to share that.
Nice points. A few more reflections. One thing that you heard stuck in your mind. Sunny's up next. Sunny straight back, and then Gita Govinda.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Sunny.
Prabhuji, hearing the Chaitanya Charitamrita in a submissive way, you were saying that the result, the benefit. Would you mind to emphasize that one more time, please?
The benefit of hearing the Chaitanya Charitamrita in a submissive way?
Yes, please.
That you'll develop love for God, love for Krishna. And was there another point? It'll remove all the faults of ignorance and put one on the path. It's the path of peace. Okay, Gita Govinda, go ahead. You have the microphone and you had your hand up, and then Himanshu will go next.
Oh, I stuck mind Krishna control by devotees' love, these words, but I'm very much inspired by this lecture and this all devotee, because I cannot learn myself to learn such thing, but by this lecture and do together, there are so much learning, very appreciate this atmosphere. It's more easy to learning, to book, this is the book, but not learning very well. So very much stuck my heart, to more learning, like this, to everybody learning so much, can speak so much thing and so inspire, But this also, like this is more easy to remember also, like you need to advance, if you want to advance, whole principle, whole thing we have to know, right? So this thing is Krishna's form and knowledge, and Krishna's pastime, and Krishna's like 3 principle, and 3 principle of energy, and Krishna and the devotees relationship. Like this way, I cannot remember all the time, but like this is more easy to remember also,
So, are you saying that Gandharvika might have a permanent job? I noticed that oftentimes, when presidents get up and speak, they have a person signing, and I'm thinking that while we have lectures and other things, maybe Gandharvika can, we have on the screen, for our broadcast, she can be in one corner doing like a.
Because especially I cannot English not so much,
Right, so it's stuck in your mind.
I cannot remember, but so much helpful it was. Thank you so much, association.
Yeah, and just so you know, Gita Govinda has a unlimited appreciating capacity. Thank you very much, Gita Govinda. And pass it straight up to Himanshu, who's been a big contributor to this conversation so far today.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare
I
Krishna.
have a doubt, and it's puzzling me. Maybe you can help clear it. So we know from the verse in Brahma Samhita, Deeparchir eva hi dashantram abhyupetya, that there is one candle, original candle. Like various Vishnu Tattvas are there, but the original Vishnu Tattva is Sri Krishna himself in the Goloka Dham. And we know Radharani is not different from Krishna. Krishna expands into Radharani for his enjoyment. But we know that inside the Goloka Dham there is a Navdeep Dham also, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing Sankirtan movement. So, who is the original candle between them? Is Krishna in a different pastime, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or I'm confused in that? I mean, when we see in the Navdeep in Bengal, well, Krishna came here, but in the Goloka, who is the original?
Yeah, it's just in Krishna Lila, when you go deeper into Krishna Lila, then you come out the other side on Chaitanya Lila. That's the thing. It's actually non-different. It's just the deepest possible understanding of Krishna Lila, because this is the ultimate result of the Krishna Lila, that Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Hladini Shakti Rasmat Ekatmana Vapi Bhuvi Pura Deham Beda Gatau Tau, that the two, Radha and Krishna, for their own pleasure pastimes have separated themselves, but in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu they've become one. This is the secret. And that is because in order to taste the love that Radharani is experiencing, Krishna desires to become his own devotee of himself, and assume the position of Radharani so that he can taste that love. So essentially that verse is saying that it's really the same pastime, only it's going all the way through to the other side, basically. And it's the logical understanding that Navadvip will be there when you go deeply enough into Radha Krishna's pastimes. Krishna is a supreme enjoyer. Damodar?
Even to look it from a mundane point of view as to why Krishna has done all these things, one of the pastimes my Guru Maharaj was telling about was when devotees from San Diego was dropping him at the airport, and there was a bottle of water which was kept near the passenger seat. And Maharaj said, I'm going to steal this bottle from you. And the devotees said, Maharaj, it's for you only. And Maharaj said, yeah, that's how Krishna does. Everything belongs to Krishna, but just to create a rasa and a mellow among various propensities, he just creates all these things. And say, for example, the glass there is for Vaisesika Prabhu, but he says, I'm not going to give you, and I'll gulp it everything. So, there's a transcendental mellows which gets in, and then everybody participates and get benefit out of that.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hare Krishna. It stuck to my mind today is how to remember shloka, and carrying like 7 shloka in my pocket.
Get your 7.
So definitely I was struggling, how to recite as well as remember. I do not have good pronunciation. In my childhood, when I have a choice whether should I learn Sanskrit or drawing, I opted at the time drawing, and I'm repenting now that I wish I would have chosen Sanskrit at the time. But definitely having 7 shloka in my pocket, I would keep that in mind.
Yeah, keep it in a little plastic baggie too, because otherwise they'll get destroyed. And there's something about carrying them around that there's sort of, you get attached to them. You start thinking about them. And thank you, nice point. Also, it's good to draw pictures with the shlokas. I chanted Brahma Samhita for a few years, and I could remember all the shlokas, but I keep forgetting the sequence. And then I was in Singapore passing through, and I ran into a brahmachari who was also chanting Brahma Samhita every day. So we sat down and chanted together, and he handed me his copy. And on his copy, next to every shloka, he had drawn a little picture. And that really helped me to remember it more. And then at the bottom, I saw that he had these little codes. And I was thinking, what are those codes? And then I realized that they were the first letter of every verse. And that's a way that you can remember whole chapters. At least it helps me anyway. A Kurnath does it a different way because his mind is very powerful. And he just sort of, he remembers the logical sequence because of the way the conversation is going. But if you need a more mechanical way, if you take the first letters of every shloka and you put them into fives, at least this is what this brahmachari did, and it taught me a new trick. And then you make that into a word, or you remember those 5 letters. And then in your mind, if you forget the sequence, then you can go back to that. And after a while, it just becomes solidified. Yeah. Was there another point? Someone else had? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. In the lecture, this point was very touching to me, that you were saying you can't compromise when you live with people around you who are uncompromising. So, because of staying with devotees, I mean, at least some kind of changes are definitely there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so by making a firm decision to stay with devotees, then hopefully...
It is. Don't go with an easy crowd. Pick association where you're challenged. And one of my godbrothers who used to serve Prabhupada was telling me how being with Prabhupada was very challenging. Very challenging. He told me one night in Hawaii, he had been serving, doing a lot of service all day long. He had cut down his sleeping. He was sleeping fewer hours and so forth, and Prabhupada called him in the middle of the night. Prabhupada was up translating. Prabhupada called him into his room and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Prabhupada, I'm sleeping." He said, "Why are you sleeping?" And he was sort of feeling a little bit pushed, because he was feeling that, well, Prabhupada, I need rest. And Prabhupada, why do you need rest? and Prabhupada kept pushing him very sternly. It was serious. And he said, "Why do you need rest?" And he said, "I'm a conditioned soul." "Why are you a conditioned soul?" And Prabhupada pushed him so hard he started crying. And then Prabhupada brought him over and he patted him on the head and put him back, go back to sleep. But he told me that pastime to express to me that some people think that it was some kind of vacation to be around Prabhupada, but it wasn't, because he's 24 hours engaged and very demanding, because he was demanding of himself to continually be in contact with Krishna. And so if you stick around people who are like that, then you'll become like that too, and you'll also realize the gap between how I'm living my life now and what my actual potential is. And that's why we have association. But we should seek association where we can be pushed like that. Take a vacation where you can go serve somebody who's performing devotional service on a very intense level. At least take some time to do that, and then you can experience what it's like. The avyarta kalatvam, no breaks, no. I mean, it's not that somebody like that is so demanding that it's insufferable. I mean, there are moments of levity and so forth, but everything's connected to Krishna. So association is very important. Anybody want the last word? Yes, Mukharavind.
Maharaj, when you were discussing about the aggressiveness, then you told humility is not just going under the table, but to follow the Krishna, leave our interest and follow the Krishna's interest. That is a real humility.
Thank you. Bali Mardan.
Mukharvinda mentioned about, the humility one here. Also, our Nick friend, he was also parking and causing big problem.
Just now?
No, last couple of weeks ago, if you remember. So he was parking, and I think you told me to go and see what's going on. So somebody, I don't remember, he was saying, no, we cannot say, be humble. I said, we are Krishna Das, not Nick Das. So we have to really say, it's our property, and we need to move around. Then I went and talked to him, and he left. But basically, I wanted to...
We'll keep that mantra. We're not Nick Das, we're Krishna Das. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll continue this reading of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's be going on all day long Tuesday, and into the future. We'll continue hearing the purports of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the various verses. Just by doing that, we'll advance in devotional service. Gaur Premanande Haribol.